I'm Martin, 70 years old, and the day my daughter handed me her husband's $300,000 debt, I realized I had failed as a father. Not because I couldn't pay it. Because I had raised a woman who believed I should. I need the money tomorrow, Dad. No delays. Those words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. Standing in my own living room, looking at my only child, the little girl I'd rocked to sleep for years after her mother died, demanding money like I was some kind of ATM machine. And you know what I said? Okay. Just like that. Quietly. Like I'd been doing my whole damn life. When they came for the money the next day, they found only an envelope, and when they opened it, they started screaming. But before I tell you what was inside that envelope, I need you to understand how I got to that moment. How a man spends 70 years of his life learning the hardest lesson of all, that sometimes the people you love the most are the ones destroying you piece by piece. Where are you watching from? Tell me in the comments, because I have a feeling some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. Let me take you back to that morning. I was sitting in my garden, watering the tomatoes my wife Sarah used to love. Retired for 5 years now, living on my pension and savings, finally finding some peace after decades of working myself to the bone. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that used to scare me but had become my sanctuary. No demands. No chaos. Just me and the life I'd built. Then I heard the car doors slam. 2 of them. Anna and Greg's voices carried across the yard, sharp and urgent. I knew immediately this wasn't a social visit. Anna never came by just to see how I was doing anymore. There was always something she needed. I met them at the front door, still holding my watering can like some kind of shield. Anna looked terrible, dark circles under her eyes, her hair unwashed, wearing the same clothes she'd had on 3 days ago when she'd called asking for a small loan of $5,000. Greg stood behind her, that smug expression he always wore when he was about to ask for something. Dad, we need to talk, Anna said, pushing past me into the house like she owned it. Which, in her mind, she probably did. What's wrong? I asked, though I already knew this conversation was going to cost me something. Greg started talking first, he always did. Some story about a business opportunity gone wrong, investors backing out, timing issues. The kind of polished bullshit he'd been feeding people for years. But then Anna cut him off. We owe $300,000, Dad. And we need it tomorrow. The number hit me like a physical blow. 300,000. More than most people make in 5 years. More than I'd ever had at one time in my entire life. What happened? I managed to ask. That's when the truth came out. Greg's consulting business, the one that supposedly justified their expensive cars, their mansion in the suburbs, their weekly spa visits, it was all fake. He'd been running investment scams, taking money from people who trusted him, promising returns he could never deliver. And now those people wanted their money back. The thing is, Dad, Anna said, settling into my recliner like she was discussing the weather, we know you have it. You've been saving for what, 40 years? You live alone in this house, you drive a 15-year-old car, you shop at discount stores. What are you even saving for? The casual cruelty in her voice, that's what broke something inside me. She wasn't asking for help. She was demanding what she believed was already hers. Anna, I said slowly, that money is my security. It's what keeps me from being a burden to you when I get older. She laughed. Actually laughed. Dad, you're 70. How much longer do you really need it for? Greg nodded along like this was the most reasonable thing in the world. Martin, we're family. This is what family does. We help each other. Help. That word had lost all meaning in this house. What if I can't get that much? I asked. Anna's face went cold. Then we're all fucked, Dad. These aren't the kind of people who accept payment plans. Do you understand what I'm saying? I understood perfectly. She was telling me that her husband's crimes had become my problem. That the life I'd built, the security I'd earned through 40 years of honest work, meant nothing compared to cleaning up their mess. I need it tomorrow, Dad. No delays. No excuses. Tomorrow. And I looked at my daughter, the child I'd raised alone after Sarah died, the girl I'd walked to school every day for years, whose college I'd paid for, whose first apartment I'd helped her furnish, and I said the word that had defined my relationship with her for decades. Okay. But this time, as I said it, something inside me was already planning something very different. That night, after they left, I sat in my living room and really looked at my life. This house where Sarah and I had planned to grow old together. The photo albums full of Anna's childhood, when she still smiled at me like I was her hero instead of her personal bank account. The saving statements showing 40 years of careful, patient accumulation. I thought about how we'd gotten here. About all the times I'd said yes when I should have said no. Anna wasn't born manipulative. I made her that way. When Sarah died, Anna was only 12, I tried to be both parents. I worked double shifts to pay for her dance classes, her piano lessons, her summer camps. I wanted her to have everything her mother would have given her. But somewhere along the way, I want to give you everything became, I owe you everything. The first time she asked for money as an adult, it was for her wedding. $20,000 for one day. I emptied my vacation fund and told myself it was an investment in her happiness. Then it was the down payment for her house. Then Greg's business startup. Then the car payments, the credit cards, the home renovations. Each time, she had a reason. Each time, I had the money. Each time, I convinced myself this would be the last time. But you know what the real poison was? The way she made me feel guilty for having what I'd earned. Like my frugality was somehow selfish. Like the fact that I lived modestly meant I owed her the difference. Sarah used to do the same thing. God, I hate admitting that. For 45 years, I've kept that woman's memory sacred. But lying there in the dark, facing the biggest financial demand of my life, I finally let myself remember what our marriage really was. Sarah was beautiful, charming, and expensive. She had tastes I couldn't afford and dreams that required my entire paycheck plus overtime. Every month, she'd find some new thing we needed, a better car, a renovation, a vacation we deserved. And every month, I'd work extra hours to pay for it, because that's what love looked like to me then. When she got sick, the medical bills nearly broke us. But even then, even dying, she wanted the private room, the expensive treatments, the comfort that cost more than we had. I mortgaged the house, emptied our retirement, borrowed against everything we owned. Because how do you tell your dying wife that you can't afford to keep her comfortable? After she died, I spent 5 years paying off the debt from her final year. 5 years working 60-hour weeks, eating ramen, wearing the same 3 shirts, just to get back to zero. And then Anna grew up and learned the same lesson her mother had taught her, that Dad's money was everyone's money, and Dad's needs came last. The next morning, I called Tom. He'd been my best friend since Vietnam, and after the war, he'd become a lawyer. He was the only person who'd ever told me the truth about my family's financial habits. Tom, I'm done being used. There was a long pause. Then, what do you need? I told him about Anna's demand. About the $300,000. About how I'd spent the night realizing that this would never end. There would always be another crisis, another emergency, another reason why my security should become their solution. Tom, I want to set up a trust. I want to put everything, the house, the savings, all of it, somewhere they can't touch it. Martin, are you sure? This is your daughter we're talking about. That's exactly why I'm sure. We spent 2 hours on the phone working out the details. The trust would be managed by Tom's firm. The house would be protected by a legal trust that couldn't be broken by family demands. My savings would be transferred to accounts that only I could access. And if something happened to me, it would go to charity, not to people who saw me as a source of funding rather than a human being. But the most important part of the plan was what came next. "I'm leaving, Tom." "What do you mean?" "I mean I'm getting on a plane and starting over somewhere else. Somewhere they can't find me. Somewhere I can figure out who I am when I'm not being someone's emergency fund." The silence on the other end of the line lasted forever. "Martin, you're 70 years old." "Exactly. How many years do I have left to live for myself?" That afternoon, I went online and booked a one-way ticket to Portland, Maine. I'd been there once with Sarah, decades ago, before Anna was born. I remembered the coast, the smell of salt air, the feeling that I could breathe there. Then I started burning things. Old photos of Anna's wedding, the one I'd paid for while she complained that $20,000 wasn't enough. Letters from Sarah asking for money for things we couldn't afford. Birthday cards from Anna that always seemed to arrive right before she needed something. I kept one photo. Anna at age 8, gap-toothed and grinning, hugging me after I'd taught her to ride a bike. That little girl had loved me for who I was, not what I could give her. I wanted to remember that version of my daughter existed, even if she was gone. The hardest part was writing the note. "Anna," I wrote, then stopped. "What do you say to a child you're abandoning? How do you explain that love isn't supposed to hurt this much?" I started over. "You've taken enough, Anna. The house, the savings, the sense of security I spent 40 years building, you've made it clear that you see all of it as yours by right. So I'm taking what's left. I'm taking my piece." I sealed the note in an envelope along with the legal documents Tom had prepared. Documents that would show her exactly what she'd lost by treating me like an ATM instead of a father. The flight was at midnight. I chose that time deliberately. I wanted to leave in the darkness, like I was disappearing into a different life. At the airport, sitting in the departure lounge with everything I owned in 2 suitcases, I felt something I hadn't experienced in decades. Freedom. At 70 years old, I had nothing left to lose but myself. And for the first time in my adult life, I was choosing myself. The plane lifted off, and I watched the lights of my old city fade below me. Somewhere down there, Anna and Greg were probably planning how to spend my money. Tomorrow, they'd find out that their ATM had closed forever. The flight to Portland took 3 hours. 3 hours to think about what I'd done, what I was doing, and what came next. The woman next to me, probably in her 50s, wearing a business suit, kept glancing at me like she was trying to figure out what a 70-year-old man was doing on a midnight flight with 2 old suitcases. I wanted to tell her, I'm running away from home. After 7 decades on this earth, I'm finally running away from the people who were supposed to love me. But I just looked out the window at the darkness and thought about Anna opening that envelope. By now, they'd be back at my house. Greg would be pacing, calculating how quickly they could access my accounts. Anna would be going through my papers, looking for bank statements, insurance policies, anything that could be liquidated. Instead, they'd find an envelope with my handwriting on it. And when they opened it, they'd find the legal documents showing that everything they'd counted on was gone. Transferred. Protected. Untouchable. They'd find my note explaining that their father, an ATM machine, had decided to choose his own life over their convenience. And then they'd start screaming. Not just from anger. From fear. Because $300,000 in debt doesn't disappear just because you can't pay it. And the kind of people Greg owed money to weren't going to accept my father-in-law ran away as an excuse. I should have felt guilty. Any normal father would have felt guilty. Instead, I felt something I'd almost forgotten. Relief. Portland at dawn was everything I'd remembered. The air tasted like salt and possibility. I took a taxi to a small motel near the water and paid for a week in cash. Then I walked down to the harbor and watched the fishing boats heading out for the day. A man my age was sitting on a bench, feeding seagulls from a paper bag. "Beautiful morning," he said. "Yes, it is. You visiting or moving here?" I thought about that for a moment. "Moving here, I think." He nodded like that made perfect sense. "Good place to start over." "I did it myself, about 10 years ago." "What made you start over?" He smiled. "Realized I'd spent 60 years living someone else's life. Figured I had at least a few years left to try living my own." That afternoon, I found a real estate agent and started looking at small houses. Nothing fancy, I wasn't trying to impress anyone anymore. Just something clean and simple near the water, where I could see the sunrise every morning and remember that each day was mine to choose. The agent, a young woman named Jennifer who reminded me of Anna before Greg changed her, showed me a cottage about 2 miles from downtown. 1 bedroom, small kitchen, front porch overlooking a cove where seals sometimes sun themselves on the rocks. "It's not much," she said apologetically. "It's perfect. The owner is asking $180,000. But with the market the way it is, you might be able to get it for less." I almost laughed. Anna had wanted $300,000 in one day for her husband's crimes. This woman was apologizing for asking $180,000 for a place where I could finally be at peace. "I'll take it," I said. "Cash offer. Full asking price." Her eyes went wide. "Don't you want to think about it? Maybe have an inspection?" "Ma'am, I've spent 70 years thinking about everything too much. This feels right." While the paperwork was being prepared, I walked around the town. Portland wasn't the kind of place where people asked too many questions about your past. Fishermen, artists, retirees, people who'd come here to escape something or find something or just be left alone. I bought groceries, simple things I actually wanted to eat, not the organic, expensive brands Anna always insisted I should buy when she visited. I bought a fishing rod, even though I hadn't fished since I was a kid. I bought books, real paper books, the kind Sarah always said were a waste of space. For the first time in decades, I was buying things because I wanted them, not because someone else expected them. But the real moment came that evening, when I was sitting on the motel bed with a takeout dinner from a local diner. My phone rang. Anna's number. I stared at that screen for a long time. 40 years of conditioning told me to answer. 40 years of training told me that when Anna called, I dropped everything and listened to what she needed. Instead, I turned the phone off. Let me tell you what that felt like. It felt like breaking a chain I'd been carrying so long I'd forgotten it was there. 3 days later, I closed on the cottage. Tom called to tell me about the aftermath back home. "She's been calling my office non-stop," he said. "Demanding to know where you are, threatening to sue me, claiming I helped you steal her inheritance." Her inheritance? That's what she called it. Said the money was supposed to be hers when you died anyway, so you had no right to hide it from her. Even from 2,000 miles away, Anna's sense of entitlement could still take my breath away. But this time, instead of guilt, I felt something new. Clarity. What about Greg? Arrested yesterday. Turns out the people he owed money to got tired of waiting. They did some investigating and found out about his other scams. The FBI is involved now. And Anna? Lost the house. Lost the cars. She's back to working full-time for the first time in 10 years. I should have felt sorry for her. Any decent father would have felt sorry for his daughter losing everything. But you know what I felt? Hope. For the first time in her adult life, Anna was going to have to figure out how to solve her own problems. I settled into my new life slowly. Mornings on the porch with coffee, watching the seals and seabirds. Afternoons reading or walking along the shore. Evenings cooking simple meals and listening to the sound of waves. I met my neighbor, Mrs. Callahan, a widow about my age who'd moved here from Boston after her husband died. She had a garden that put my old tomato plants to shame, and she taught me about growing vegetables in coastal soil. The salt in the air makes everything grow different, she said. You have to learn what works here, not what worked where you came from. That felt like a metaphor for everything. I joined a group of local retirees who met for coffee every morning at a place called Harbor Lights. Engineers, teachers, fishermen, small business owners, people who'd worked hard their whole lives and were finally learning how to rest. None of them asked about my family. None of them wanted to know why a 70-year-old man had moved to Maine by himself. They just accepted me as part of the group, and we talked about books and weather and local politics and which fishing spots were worth trying. It was the kind of community I'd been looking for my whole life without realizing it. After a month, I started volunteering at the local food bank. Loading trucks, sorting donations, helping other people who'd found themselves starting over with nothing. Some were young people escaping bad situations. Some were older folks whose savings had been wiped out by medical bills or family crises. I understood all of them. Working there, I started to see my own situation differently. I hadn't abandoned my daughter. I'd refused to enable her anymore. There's a difference, even though it took me 70 years to learn it. One evening, Mrs. Callahan invited me over for dinner. Nothing fancy, just pot roast and vegetables from her garden, but it was the first home-cooked meal someone had made for me since Sarah died. Can I ask you something personal? She said as we were cleaning up. Sure. What made you come here? A man doesn't move across the country at our age without a good reason. I told her the whole story. Anna, Greg, the $300,000 demand, the envelope, the midnight flight. Everything. She listened without judgment, nodding in the right places, asking careful questions. Do you miss her? She asked finally. I miss who she used to be, I said. But I don't miss being afraid of my own phone ringing. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard. It's also the truest. 3 months into my new life, the letter arrived. I recognized Anna's handwriting immediately. My address in Maine was on the envelope. Somehow, she'd found me. I sat on my porch for an hour, just holding that letter. Part of me wanted to throw it away unopened. Part of me needed to know what she had to say. Finally, I opened it. Dad, it started. I know you don't want to hear from me. I know you think I'm a terrible person. Maybe you're right. The letter was 3 pages long. She told me about losing the house, about Greg's arrest, about having to take a job as a cashier at a grocery store. She told me about the apartment she was renting, about learning to budget, about realizing how much money she'd been spending on things that didn't matter. I want to say I'm sorry, she wrote, but I know that's not enough. I want to say I'll pay you back, but we both know I can't. I want to say I understand why you left, but I'm still angry about it. Then, at the end, I don't know if you'll ever forgive me. I don't know if I deserve forgiveness. But I want you to know that losing everything taught me something. It taught me that you were never my emergency fund. You were my father. And I forgot that difference. I read that letter 5 times. Then I put it in a drawer and went for a long walk along the shore. Was she telling the truth? Had she really learned something? Or was this just another manipulation, a softer approach to the same old demand for money? I didn't know. And for the first time in my life, I realized I didn't have to know. I didn't have to solve Anna's problems anymore. I didn't have to fix her life or fund her mistakes or rescue her from the consequences of her choices. I could just love her from a distance and wish her well. That evening, I wrote a short reply. Anna, you don't owe me an apology. You owe yourself a new beginning. I hope you find it. I mailed it the next morning. Winter in Maine was harder than I'd expected. The cottage needed better insulation, and heating bills were higher than I'd budgeted for. But there was something beautiful about the cold, clean silence of snow falling over the harbor. I learned to split wood, to winterize pipes, to drive carefully on icy roads. Skills I'd never needed before, because I'd always lived in places where someone else took care of the practical details. Mrs. Callahan invited me for Thanksgiving dinner. Just the two of us, plus a stray cat she'd been feeding all summer. We talked about our dead spouses, our complicated children, the strange relief of being responsible only for ourselves. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Leaving everything behind?" "I regret waiting so long to do it." Christmas came and went without a word from Anna. I bought myself a small tree and decorated it with simple ornaments from the local hardware store. On Christmas morning, I made coffee and sat on my porch watching the sunrise over the harbor. It was the most peaceful Christmas I'd had since Sarah died. Spring brought new growth in Mrs. Callahan's garden and new possibilities in my own life. I started taking a watercolor class at the community center. I'd never painted before, but something about trying to capture the changing light over the harbor felt important. My instructor was a woman in her 50s who'd moved to Maine after a divorce. "Art is about learning to see what's actually there," she said, "instead of what you think should be there." Another metaphor that hit too close to home. 1 year after I'd left, Tom called with an update. "Greg got 5 years in federal prison," he said. Anna testified against him. Cooperation probably kept her from being charged as an accessory. "How is she?" "Different, from what I hear. She's been working 2 jobs, living in a studio apartment, driving a car that's older than yours used to be. Word is she's been going to some kind of therapy group for people with financial problems. Good for her. Martin, she asked me to give you a message." I waited. "She said to tell you that she's learning to live within her means. And that she finally understands what you tried to teach her about money." "What's that?" "That it's not about what you have. It's about knowing the difference between what you need and what you want." I thought about that for a long time after we hung up. Anna was 45 years old. If she was really learning to take care of herself, she had time to build a good life. A real life, based on what she could earn rather than what she could extract from other people. Maybe the best thing I'd ever done for her was refuse to rescue her one more time. Summer brought tourists to Portland, and with them, a different energy. Young families walking along the harbor, elderly couples holding hands on park benches, people who looked like they were genuinely enjoying their lives. I thought about Sarah sometimes, wondering what she would think of my new life. Would she understand why I'd finally learned to say no? Or would she see it as selfishness, the way Anna had? I decided it didn't matter. Sarah was gone, Anna was grown, and I was finally learning how to live for myself. Mrs. Callahan and I started taking evening walks together. Nothing romantic, we were both too old and too set in our ways for that. But companionship. Someone to share the sunset with, to talk about books and gardens and the peculiar satisfaction of a life lived simply. "You know what I like about you, Martin," she said one evening as we watched the fishing boats come in. "What's that?" "You're not trying to fix anyone. Most men I meet want to solve my problems or tell me what I should do differently. You just let me be who I am." "I spent 70 years trying to fix people," I said. "It never worked. It never works. But it took me 68 years to figure that out." 2 years after leaving, I got another letter from Anna. This one was different, shorter, more honest. "Dad, I know I don't have the right to ask for anything. But I wanted you to know that I've been sober for 6 months. I didn't even realize I had a drinking problem until everything fell apart. Turns out I was self-medicating a lot of things, including the guilt of how I treated you." She told me about her job at a nonprofit that helped people with financial literacy. About the tiny apartment she'd finally furnished with her own money. About learning to cook, to budget, to find joy in small things. "I'm not asking you to come back," she wrote. "I'm not asking for money or forgiveness or anything else. I just wanted you to know that I'm trying to become the kind of person who deserved a father like you." This time, I wrote back immediately. "Anna, you always deserved love. But love doesn't mean giving someone everything they want. It means helping them become who they're capable of being. I think you're finding that person now." I mailed it that same day. Months passed. I heard from Tom occasionally. Anna was doing well, still working, still sober, apparently dating someone who worked for the same nonprofit. "A teacher," Tom said. "Someone with modest means and realistic expectations." "She asked me to tell you something else," Tom said during one of our calls. "What?" "She said she understands now why you left. She said she's grateful." "Grateful?" Her words were, "He gave me the gift of having to save myself." I had to sit down when Tom told me that. 3 years into my life in Maine, I had a routine that felt like peace. Morning coffee on the porch. Afternoon walks or painting. Evening dinners with Mrs. Callahan or my coffee shop friends. Weekends volunteering at the food bank or working in the small garden I'd finally learned to grow. My savings, carefully managed by Tom's firm, were lasting longer than I'd hoped. The cottage was paid for, my needs were simple, and I discovered that happiness doesn't actually cost very much. One evening, as I was reading on my porch, a car pulled up in front of my house. A small, older car that I didn't recognize. The driver got out slowly, and I realized it was Anna. She looked different. Older, yes, but also more solid somehow. Her clothes were simple but neat. Her hair was shorter. She moved like someone who'd learned to carry her own weight. She walked up to my porch and stopped at the bottom of the steps. "Hi, Dad." "Hello, Anna." We looked at each other for a long moment. "I know I should have called first," she said. "But I was afraid you'd tell me not to come. You drove all the way from Ohio? I wanted to see where you live. I wanted to see if you're happy." I gestured to the chair beside me. "Would you like to sit down?" She came up the steps carefully, like she was afraid I might change my mind. We sat in silence for a while, watching the harbor. A seal popped its head up near the shore, looked at us curiously, then disappeared. "It's beautiful here," Anna said finally. "It is. I can see why you chose it." More silence. But it wasn't uncomfortable. It was just quiet. "Dad, I came to tell you something." I waited. "I'm getting married." "To the teacher Tom mentioned?" She looked surprised. "You know about David?" "Tom keeps me updated sometimes." "David doesn't have much money," she said. "He teaches 4th grade and coaches soccer. We're going to have a very simple wedding. Maybe just at the courthouse." "Do you love him?" "Yes. But more than that, I respect him. And he respects me. That's everything that matters. I also came to tell you that I understand now why you had to leave. I was killing you, wasn't I? Piece by piece, year after year." I thought about how to answer that. "You were hurt, Anna. And hurt people sometimes hurt the people who love them. But you're not that person anymore." "How do you know?" "Because you drove 8 hours to sit on my porch and ask me if I'm happy. The old Anna would have driven 8 hours to ask me for something." She started crying then. Not the manipulative tears I remembered, but the real grief of someone who'd finally understood what they'd lost. "I'm so sorry, Dad. For everything. For taking advantage of you, for treating you like an ATM, for never asking how you were or what you needed. I'm sorry it took losing everything for me to remember that you're my father, not my employee. Anna, look at me." She lifted her head. "You were my daughter then, and you're my daughter now. Nothing you did changed that. I left because I needed to save myself, not because I stopped loving you. Can you forgive me?" "I forgave you the day I left." Not because you deserved it, but because carrying anger was too heavy. We talked until sunset. She told me about her job, about David, about the small life she was building based on what she could afford rather than what she wanted. I told her about Mrs. Callahan, about my painting classes, about the strange piece of being responsible only for myself. Are you happy, Dad? Yes, I am. For the first time in decades, I'm actually happy. I'm glad. I'm so glad. She stayed for dinner, takeout from the local fish place, eaten on my small kitchen table while she told me about her plans for a tiny wedding and a honeymoon camping trip they were saving up for. We're going to have a small life, she said. But it's going to be our life, built on what we can actually afford. Small lives can be the richest ones. Before she left the next morning, she hugged me. A real hug, the kind she used to give me when she was little. Dad, I don't expect anything from you. I don't want money or help or anything else. I just want you to know that I'm okay. And I want you to stay okay too. I will. Maybe I could visit again sometime? Not often, just sometime. I'd like that. After she drove away, I sat on my porch for hours, thinking about forgiveness and second chances and the strange ways people find their way back to love. Mrs. Callahan came over that evening with a bottle of wine. How did it go? She asked. Better than I expected. Different than I feared. Are you glad she came? Yes. But I'm also glad she left. Why? Because I didn't feel obligated to fix her problems or fund her future. I could just love her and let her take care of herself. That's what real love looks like, Martin. Most people never figure that out. Now, sitting here 4 years after that midnight flight to Maine, I want to tell you what I've learned about family and money and the difference between helping and enabling. I learned that you can love someone completely and still refuse to be their safety net. I learned that the word no can be an act of love, even when it feels cruel. I learned that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for your children is to let them face the consequences of their choices. Most importantly, I learned that at 70 years old, or any age, it's never too late to choose your own life. Anna got married last month. A small ceremony in a public park, with about 20 guests and a reception at a local restaurant. David's family, some friends from work, and me. She sent me photos afterward, pictures of two people who looked genuinely happy with their simple, honest life. She didn't ask me to pay for anything. She didn't hint about needing help with the deposit or the dress or the flowers. She just invited me to celebrate with them, and I did. That's how I know she's really changed. Not because she apologized, but because she stopped expecting me to finance her happiness. My savings are still intact, managed carefully and growing slowly. When I die, it will go to charities that help people learn financial independence, places like the nonprofit where Anna works, organizations that teach people the difference between needs and wants. I won't leave it to Anna, and she knows that. More importantly, she agrees with that choice. I don't want your money, Dad, she told me during her last visit. I want the security of knowing I can take care of myself. That might be the proudest I've ever been of her. Mrs. Callahan and I still take evening walks. My coffee shop friends still gather every morning to solve the world's problems over blueberry muffins. I still paint terrible watercolors of the harbor and volunteer at the food bank and tend my small garden. It's a quiet life, some might say a small life. But it's mine. At 74 now, I've learned that money can rebuild houses, but not hearts. I've learned that the best way to love your family might be to stop rescuing them from themselves. I've learned that walking away isn't giving up, it's growing up. And I've learned that it's never too late to choose peace over chaos, even if that peace comes at the cost of relationships you thought you couldn't live without. If you've ever had to walk away from people you love to find yourself, I understand. If you've ever been someone's emergency fund instead of their father or mother or friend, I see you. If you've ever realized that saying yes to everyone else means saying no to yourself, you're not alone. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is teach people that they're capable of saving themselves. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is save yourself first. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, the people you love will understand that you didn't abandon them, you gave them the gift of their own strength. The sun is setting over the harbor now. Mrs. Callahan will be by soon for our evening walk. Tomorrow I'll paint another terrible watercolor and have coffee with friends who know my story and don't judge it. This is what peace looks like. This is what it means to finally come home to yourself. And for the first time in my life, that's enough.